Good day, everyone. For today, my team and I will be discussing the importance of virginity or Mizuage versus the sowing wild oats. The comparison of virginity or Mizuage and sowing wild oats reflects deep seated cultural and gender biases. In this presentation, we will first identify and know the definition and description of the issues and its effect on women. Secondly, we will dig deep with the feminist school of thought that best explains these issues. Thirdly, we will tackle the woman's right and the laws that were violated. And lastly, we will discuss the resolution and recommended actions to safeguard the rights of women. The first word that we need to define and understand is virginity. Virginity has been tied to a woman's purity, worth, and life prospect, particularly with respect to marriage. The second word that we need to define and understand is the word mizuage. Mizuage is the deflowering ritual of courtesans, where their first sexual experience was often auctioned to the highest bidder. Such a practice is greatly reflected in the Japanese culture of geisha. A geisha's sole purpose is to entertain and is forbidden from falling in love or starting a family in the expense of the profession. Rather than having a husband, a geisha may have a dana. A dana is an affluent supporter who provides for her financially in a role similar to that of a husband. However, they are not married, so the man is not required to divorce his wife. A geisha begins her training as an apprentice at a very young age who is taught by an apparent big sister who helps them improve their skills in dance, manner, and the art of seduction. When the child reaches a certain age, one is required to go through the Mizuage ritual. Such practice is deemed as the change from a girl to entering womanhood through sexual intercourse. Unfortunately, these geishas are not allowed to decide who they should lose their virginity to. The third and the last thing we need to define and understand is the phrase sowing wild oats. The idea of sowing wild oats also allowed men to engage in premarital sex without any negative consequences, something that was always available through the gate of ideology. These are some of the effects towards women in relation to the importance of virginity or mizuage versus the sowing wild oats. Number one is psychological impact. Women may experience shame, guilt, or diminished self worth due to societal pressure to conform to unrealistic standards of purity. In pursuit of gender ideologies, women are led to believe that such practices are the basic appeal of the gender and should not be contradicted. Number two is discrimination. Women are often stigmatized for their sexual choices, while men face little to no repercussions. These practices often serve as seedbed for gender stereotypes and most often establish the norm of how women should be viewed rather than women having the liberty to define themselves. Number three is gender inequality. This double standard perpetuates the unequal treatment of women, reinforcing the notion that their value is tied to their sexual history rather than their abilities or character. Equality between men and women in societal structure and practice is an integral part of society building, yet continue to be constrained by traditional dogmas and privileged notions, which extends the culture to society as a whole. Such perception directly affects both gender discourse and self awareness, especially for women. Number four is social inequality. Women face stricter societal scrutiny and are often subjected to slut shaming, while men are celebrated for similar behavior. Across the globe, people's identification as belonging to a specific gender group shapes basic conditions and practices in institutions such as livelihood, education, and politics. In fact, gender plays a vital role in determining who goes hungry and who gets adequate nutrition and water. Lastly, is violence and exploitation. Practices like mizuage or virginity testing can lead to physical and psychological harm, reinforcing control over women's body.
Good day, everyone. My name is Trisha Ignacio, and I'll be presenting on the feminist school of thought that best explains our issue at hand. Now, feminism is a contemporary social and political movement motivated by individual and collective experiences of women, based on the claim that a society is grounded on the patriarchal principles according to which men are privileged over women, resulting in discrimination against women in public and private life. Now, by our determination, our topic is best explained by the radical feminist perspective, which is a type of feminism claiming that the sexual oppression of women is at the very heart of patriarchy and helps uphold male dominance, which is a control over women's bodies and sexual freedom, justifying the policing of women. Now, radicals argue, relative to our topic, that the focus on virginity, as in Mizuage rituals, practiced in the traditional Japanese culture, and the Western notion on sowing wild oats is actually an attempt to police women's bodies, controlling their sexual activities merely as a tool for the interests of men. Further, the Western notion of sowing wild oats for men embodies the patriarchal privilege that allows men to exploit and trample women with impunity, as highlighted on the radical feminist theory. Through this theory, it can be said that the sexual freedom enjoyed by the male gender through sowing wild oats notion reflects the view that the patriarchal society as a generally unjust system in which women are categories of people exposed to various types of discrimination and exploitation. Now, we believe the issue at hand is best explained also through other cultural theories, such as cultural feminism. Cultural feminism refers to a philosophy that men and women have different attitudes to the world around them, and that the greater value should be applied on the way women approach the world. Now, cultural feminism also applies in the present topic, as it critiques traditions such as Mizuage or the virginity ordeal, and how they perpetuate oppressive gender roles by glamorizing sexual subjugation of women while celebrating sexual freedom of men, as in the sowing wild oats notion. Now, although the positive movement that the cultural feminism offers is the inequality as a positive calculation of ideology roots, it views virginity of women as a peculiar way of building virile dominance over men through capitalist practices like Mizwage as representation of womanhood after its commemoration. Now, another theory that we believe explains the issue is the social constructivism theory. Now, this theory is also posed as a challenge on the traditional perspective on females, which states that one is not born feminine or masculine, but are rather culturally programmed as they age. It views gender not as a biological entity, but as a social construct shaped by cultural experiences and societal expectation as an achieved status reproduced throughout history. Now, such a view categorizes people and how they should belong and act according to their inception. It involves association of meaning to categorize gender through which people are classified and are expected to abide by in life. Now, from a social constructivist perspective, Ms. Wage can be seen as a social and cultural conduct that was shaped by historical, economic, and gendered context of time. In traditional Japanese periods, courtesans were not just seen as sexual beings, but also entertainers, political figures, and even cultural symbols. The ritualized nature of Mizwage can be viewed as a social construct designed to uphold particular power dynamics that both reflects and reinforces the societal notions of hierarchy, gender roles, sexuality. In this sense, the meaning of Mizwage was constructed by the larger social and cultural forces, including notions of honor, beauty, and femininity. Social constructivism also suggests that individuals' experiences are shaped by their interactions with society. Now, in the case of Mizwage, women were often complicit in the performance of their roles due to pressures of societal expectations, even if those roles were imposed upon them. Now, in the Western context, on the other hand, the phrase sowing wild oats generally refers to young people, particularly men, engaging in casual sexual experimentation or rebellious behaviors as a rite of passage. It's often seen as a part of the journey to maturity, where young people are expected to go through a phase of experimentation and personal discovery before settling into a more stable, socially accepted roles. Now, from a social constructivist perspective, the concept of sowing wild oats is similarly constructed within a cultural framework. It is shaped by societal attitudes toward youth, freedom, sexuality, and individualism. Now, in many Western societies, the idea of sowing wild oats is often gendered, with different expectations placed on men and women. Men may be encouraged to sow wild oats as a form of masculine identity, while women may face societal pressures and lashbacks to preserve their sexual purity and avoid the same behavior. Now, these social norms are often constructed through social interactions such as family expectations, peer pressure, and media portrayal, shaping how individuals understand and engage with society, sexuality, and personal growth. In this juncture, we'll talk about women's rights relative to the importance of virginity or Mizuage versus sowing wild oats. First would be right to equality. Article 5 of the United Nations Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, is crucial because it addresses the social and cultural patterns of behavior perpetuating discrimination against women. This article emphasizes that equality is not just a legal issue, but also a deeply ingrained cultural and societal matter, requiring transformation in norms, traditions, and stereotypes that hinder women's full participation in society. Second would be the right to autonomy and bodily integrity. Now, the United Nations has constantly tried to uphold female autonomy and bodily integrity through calls for ban on virginity testing. Virginity testing is a gynecological examination conducted under the belief that it determines whether a woman or a girl has had vaginal intercourse, which the UN or the United Nations believe should end. In a global call to eliminate violence against women and girls everywhere, they view that these are medically unnecessary procedures and oftentimes painful, humiliating, and traumatic experience. Virginity testing is a long-standing tradition that has been documented in at least 20 countries, spanning all regions of the world where women and girls are subjected and often forced to undergo. These are these are made through requests from parents or potential partners to establish marriage eligibility, or from employers or for employment eligibility. It is mostly performed by doctors, police officers, or community leaders in order to assess their what they so call virtue or virginity as part of societal norm. Another right that prevails over this topic is the right to privacy and dignity. Now, the UNESCO recognizes that the right to privacy is a core human right and that women are particularly vulnerable to violations of this right due to various forms of gender based violence and discrimination. In its various reports and initiative, UNESCO emphasizes the need to ensure that women's personal information is protected and that their personal autonomy and privacy are respected in all spheres of life. And lastly, the right to freedom from discrimination, which is best reflected under Republic Act 9710, or the Magna Carta of Women. Now, the Magna Carta of Women is a comprehensive women's human rights law in the Philippines enacted in 2009. It is a landmark legislation aimed at ensuring the protection, promotion, and fulfillment of the rights of women in the country. Now, the Magna Carta of Women specifically addresses issues of gender equality and non discrimination, focusing on barriers or removing barriers that prevent women from fully participating in society, including in political, social, economic, and cultural spheres, explicitly prohibiting all forms of discrimination against women and guarantees their right to equality and non discrimination. Now, these rights and how they are violated will be further explained in the subsequent slides. Thank you.
In continuation, we are now moving regarding the relations to the laws violated in this. So first, we have the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, or CEDAW, under Article 5, which requires states to eliminate gender-based social cultural stereotypes. It states that to modify the social and cultural patterns of conduct of men and women with a view of achieving the elimination of prejudices and customary and all other practices, which are based on the idea of the inferiority or the superiority of either of the sexes, or on stereotype roles for men and women. Number two, we have the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, or UDHR, under Article 1 for the equality and Article 12 for the privacy. So for Article 1, it states that all women beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reasons and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. While Article 12 states that no one shall be subjected to arbitrary interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, nor to attack upon his honor and reputation. So everyone has the right to the protection of law against such interference or attacks. Number three is the Magna Carta of Women under RA 9710. So under Section 4, it states that, or it defines discrimination against women as any act or omission that excludes or restricts women from enjoying their rights on an equal basis with men. Section 5 also states that it obligates the state to promote substantive equality and eliminate discriminatory practices. Moving on, we have the number 4, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act under RA 9262. So while not directly addressing virginity, this law protects women from psychological violence, which can include societal pressures and stigmatization related to sexual purity. We move on to RPC. So, under the Article 202 of the Revised Penal Code, for the purpose of this article, women who, for money or profit, habitually indulge in sexual intercourse or lascivious conduct are deemed to be prostitutes. So, in our country, here in the Philippines, the RPC criminalizes prostitution as defined by the aforementioned provision. Hence, relative to the present issue, the exploitation of geisha through the Mizuage ritual may be covered under this provision. So now, moving on to the resolution and recommended actions. So we have the current actions and movements. So first, the legal reform. So some countries have banned virginity testing, such as Indonesia and Egypt, while other countries have criminalized honor killing. So next, we have feminist activism. So movements like hashtag My Body My Choice advocates against purity culture and for sexual autonomy. Number three, for educational programs, sex can be taught to the younger generation by emphasizing consent, equality, and bodily autonomy. So, in addition to this, feminist movements and NGOs work to educate communities about the harmful effect of double standards and advocates for women's social autonomy. So next we have the awareness campaign. So for awareness campaigns, feminist organization and advocacy groups in the Philippines and globally have been working to challenge harmful gender norms through education and public awareness campaign. Next is we have the legislative measures. So law like the Magna Carta of Women aim to address gender-based discrimination and promote equality. And last but not the least, we have the international convention. So here in the Philippines, it is a signatory to CEDAW, which obligates the government to take measures to eliminate gender-based stereotypes. So, moving on, we have the recommended course of action. So, first, we have the legal protection. Second, the public awareness campaign. Third, the abolition of harmful tradition. Next is we have the education and advocacy. Fifth, we have the community engagement. We have also the support systems. And seven is we have the empowerment program. So, for the legal protection first. All country legislature should strengthen laws to explicitly address and penalize practices like virginity testing or other form of sexual discrimination. So here in our country, our legislature should strengthen the implementation of existing laws like the Magna Carta of Women to ensure accountability for discriminatory practices. So to enact a specific legislation and addressing societal pressures related to virginity and sexual double standards. So for the public awareness campaign, so addressing cultural beliefs that shame women for their sexuality while celebrating men. For the abolition of harmful tradition, we encourage the abandonment of practices like virginity testing or Mizuage through social activism. For education and advocacy, the integrate gender sensitivity and equality education into school curricula to challenge stereotype from an early age. So conduct public awareness campaigns to deconstruct the double standard and promote respect for women's autonomy. So for the community engagement, um, we encourage community dialogues to challenge traditional norms, and promote progressive attitude towards gender equality. For the support system, we provide psychological support and counseling for women affected by the societal pressures related to virginity. And for the empowerment programs, we provide support and resources for women to assert their rights and challenge societal expectations.